Risk Strike is a card-driven implementation of the classic board game Risk, promising a game of fast and fierce world domination. In Risk Strike, 2 to 5 players will be playing tactics cards and rolling dice in order to defeat their opponents in battle, hoping to establish dominance over 2 of the 6 continents, thereby winning the game. During setup, each player will be dealt 3 continent cards and 3 tactics cards. The continent cards are dealt face-up and the tactics cards are kept secret. Players will then roll to see who goes first. Highest roll wins. Ties are broken by more rolling between tied players until one remains. Once a first player is established, the rest of the players will receive additional starting cards. In a 3 to 5 player game, each will receive 1 additional tactics card. In a 2-player game, the second player will draw 1 additional face-up continent card and 1 additional tactics card, so they'll end up with 4 of each. First, let's talk about the 2 different types of cards. Continent cards are white, and they represent the populations of each of the respective continents. These cards are always face-up. Players will collect these cards throughout the game. As soon as a player has a sufficient amount of a particular continent, they will receive a domination token. If a single player ever has 2 domination tokens, they immediately win the game. As you'll see when we talk about combat, these cards are the currency of the game. They will be used as troops and will be won or lost by rolling dice. They sort of double as both troops and territories in classic Risk. Here's a breakdown of the 42 cards in the deck. There are 4 each of South America and Australia, 6 of Africa, 7 of Europe, 9 of North America, and 12 of Asia. The numbers in the corner of the cards indicate how many of each a player must have in order to dominate that particular continent. So, for example, you need 5 Europe cards in front of you to claim the blue domination token, or 4 Africa cards for the red token, and so on. Now let's turn to tactics cards. The black tactics cards are used to assist players during battles and possibly at other times during the game. They are essential to success in Risk Strike. There is no hand size limit. If the deck is ever empty, the discard pile is shuffled and a new deck is formed. Each tactics card specifies when it can be played. Most of these cards are used in battles, and we'll talk about those when we talk about combat. But for now, let's talk about a couple that can be used outside of combat. There are 2 spy cards in the tactics deck. Spy can be played at any time on your turn to look at another player's hand of tactics cards. After seeing what they have, you also get to draw a tactics card from the deck for yourself. Playing the expand card on your turn allows you to either draw 2 continent cards or draw 1 tactics card. There are only 2 expand cards in the tactics deck. There are 3 cancel orders cards in the tactics deck. These can be used at any time to cancel a tactic card played by another player. Cancel orders cannot be used to cancel any troops tactics cards in a battle. We'll see how troops work when we talk about combat. One note about tactics cards in general. At first, it may not seem obvious as to when they may be played and in what order if multiple players wish to play them. But unless they say, quote, on your turn, end quote, they can be played during other players' turns, including to influence the outcome of other players' battles, and in the flow of the game, it should become second nature after 1 or 2 plays. That being said, I still highly recommend looking to the rules forum for Risk Strike on BoardGameGeek.com for more information on specific tactics cards and other rules questions that pop up. I'll put a link to Board Game Geek in the description below. Now let's talk about gameplay. In Risk Strike, players will take turns in clockwise order. At the start of their turn, a player will choose 2 total cards of their choice from the continent and tactics decks. They can choose 2 from one deck or 1 from each deck. Also, at times during the game, there may be some continent cards that were discarded in battle by an unsuccessful attacker. These may also be drawn instead of drawing from the decks. Once 2 cards are drawn, total, at that point a player will decide if they wish to make a single attack or end their turn and pass. If a player passes, they draw an additional tactics card from the deck and their turn ends immediately. In other words, they will get 3 total cards and their turn is over. If instead a player elects to attack, they will be able to attack exactly one player at one single location. To attack, the attacker will choose one of their own continents in front of them and attack from that location to the opponent's continent. In order to do this, the continents must be connected. This is dictated by a map card that comes with the game. Any continents connected by arrows are adjacent and attackable. In addition, the attacker can attack from the same location. For example, if the attacker has any Europe continent cards in front of them, they can attack from there to an opponent's Europe cards. The main reason for an attack is to try and obtain continent cards the defender possesses and add them to the attacker's tableau. To do this, both sides will roll dice and likely use tactics cards to wreak havoc upon their opponent. Other players may also throw in some tactics cards to influence the battle, though this might be at the risk of weakening their own nation by giving up precious cards. Once a battle has been announced, the combatants enter the troops phase. At this point, the attacker, followed by the defender, will announce if they are committing any troops to the battle. After this, any players around the table can add troops to either side of the conflict. When troops cards are applied, they will be the first casualties in a battle. Only after troops are lost, in the ensuing roll-off, will damage be taken in the form of losing continent cards. There are 18 troops cards in the tactics deck. After the troops phase, players will roll dice just like the original Risk. The attacker's dice are red, the defender's are black. The attacker can roll a maximum of 3 dice per round, and the defender's max is 2. Continent and troops cards are the currency for battle. If the combatants have more total cards than their maximum amounts of respective dice, they can only roll the max. But if they have less total cards than the maximum, they must reduce dice accordingly. Once dice have been rolled, they are compared head-to-head from highest to lowest. For example, here the attacker is attacking from Europe to Asia. The attacker has 4 Europe cards, and so they can roll a maximum of 3 dice. The defender has 4 total cards, including 3 Asia cards and 1 troops card, so they can roll their maximum of 2 dice. The numbers are rolled and the highest are matched up. Here it's a tie on the highest, 5 versus 5. Ties in Risk go to the defender, so that result is a loss for the attacker. Since the attacker has no troops cards, they must discard one of their Europe cards face up next to the 2 draw decks. As mentioned before, these cards will be available to be drawn on anyone's subsequent turns. The next highest dice rolled in our example are the red 3 and the black 2. This result is in favor of the attacker. Because the defender has a troops card, this is discarded in lieu of a continent card. If there were no troops for the defender, one of the defender's Asia cards would be given to the attacker and added to the attacker's play area. The extra red die with 1 pip in our example would not be resolved. That's just how it works in the world of Risk. Now that the round is over, the attacker would either elect to stop or continue. If they stop, their turn is immediately over. If they wish to continue, then each side rolls again. Keep in mind that no more troops cards will be added between rounds. They can only be played before the first rolls of a battle. Other tactics cards might be played between rounds, and possibly by non-combatants around the table. Once a battle is over, any troops cards that were played and not destroyed by dice rolls are sent to the tactics discard pile. Let's look at another example. Here, the attacker has 2 Europe cards remaining and the defender has 1 Asia card. Neither side has any troops left. Therefore, the attacker can only roll 2 dice and the defender gets just 1. The dice are rolled and compared. Here, there is another tie at 5 for the highest. Ties go to the defender, so the attacker sends 1 Europe card to the face-up draw area. The remaining red 3 is not resolved. The attacker must then decide if they wish to continue rolling or end their turn. Remember, if at any point the attacker obtains enough cards to meet the domination requirement, in this case it would be 8 for Asia, they would immediately take the green domination token, and if that was the second domination token in their tableau, the game would end immediately. That's how combat works. To finish up with this tutorial, let me show you the rest of the tactics cards as promised. Again, please check BoardGameGeek.com for any rules questions regarding these cards before commenting here. I think you'll find it helpful. I know I did. Again, there'll be a link in the description below. There are 4 sabotage cards in the tactics deck. Sabotage can be played immediately after any troops have been deployed at the start of a battle. All troops cards are returned to the player's hands and the attacker's turn is over. Keep in mind, this card can be played by a non-combatant as well. There are 3 artillery cards in the tactics deck. Artillery is played any time after troops are deployed. It can force any one player to discard 2 active troops cards from the battle. Again, this can be played by a non-combatant. There are 4 bombard cards in the deck. These can be played after players roll dice to change any one die to a 6. Keep in mind, this may change the matchups of the dice that were rolled. Bombard can be played by non-combatants as well as combatants. Lastly, there are 4 rally cards in the deck. These cards must be played on your turn, so they can only apply to the attacker. After the dice are rolled, you may add 2 to each die you rolled. One of the examples in the rulebook demonstrates that this could raise a die's value above 6. Well, there you have it. That's how you play Risk Strike. I hope this video was helpful. Thank you for watching. Please hit that like button and also go ahead and subscribe to the channel while you're here.